Welcome to Tentative Title with Tim. This is a podcast about creativity, about process, about filmmaking, and about screenwriting. Welcome back, everybody. Now let's get into it. So today's topic is a continuation of last week, which is how I start a screenplay. Now, before you even start a screenplay, you should consider one very, very important part of this entire equation. And that is, who is the audience that you are writing this story for? That is a concept that so many writers, including myself, overlook because we get so excited about the idea in our head. It's brand new. It has a lot of promise. You can see parts of it in your head, and it's exciting. It's very exciting to get an idea. It's very exciting to have something that you can give to the world. But sometimes the world doesn't need this story that you want to tell. Sometimes it's just a story that is meant to lead to something else. So there's also another distinction with that as well, especially as filmmakers, and it's that sometimes we write stories not because it's for the general audience, but we're writing stories to impress other filmmakers because we know that they have seen a lot of the tropes. They've seen a lot of things that anybody who's in the industry would find boring, and you have a story that is going to upend all of that. It's the subversion of expectation on plot, on character, on genre. It's something that's exciting because it is upending something that you believe is inherently boring because it is stuck in a genre, or it is stuck in this mold of characters and archetypes that have been used for millions of years by now. So it can get really exciting when that idea pops into your head and you think, oh wow, that's new. I should explore that idea because it is gonna completely change the way people see this kind of story. Now, it can be a good thing because if you're making your film for a film festival in which other filmmakers are going to be there and would appreciate the effort that you're putting in to take something that is usually kind of boring because it's always used, and you flip it on its head, you will most likely get rewarded for that because you have other filmmakers who are trying to do the same thing. They're trying to find a fresh take on a story that is tried and true. But if you were to take that same story and try to give it to a general audience, they might reject it because of the fact that it's not giving them something that they're expecting. If they're coming into a movie and they're expecting that they're going to see a Western, and all of a sudden it turns into a sci-fi action film in the third act, unless you've set it up really well, the audience might reject it because that's not what they came to see. They came to see a Western. They came to see a shoot 'em up in the town square type of movie. So it's very important to consider before even doing the whole idea document that I was talking about before, who your audience is and where this film is meant to go. If it's meant to go into a film festival, by all means, yes. And in fact, this is something that I should probably add to my whole working document at the beginning, is where this movie is meant to go, or where this idea is meant to go. If it's meant to go to a film festival, then great. If it's meant to just be put out on VOD or into movie theaters for general consumption, then that is a consideration that must be thought of right at the beginning. And this as well will help define your idea. This will help craft it in a way that can be digested for filmmakers or for general audiences. Now, there's a whole spectrum between, the people who appreciate art films and like filmmakers might, and just the general kind of like 3-act structure, basic films that are put into movie theaters that sometimes actually make billions of dollars because they are meant to be for all 4 quadrants. So it's important to keep that in mind, and to just take a moment to consider where it's supposed to go. And this will also help with marketing. This will also help with raising funds for your film. If you have an idea about who your audience is, you will be able to put that film in a place where it will be appreciated, instead of it just floundering out in the world. I've heard stories of filmmakers being extremely frustrated because their films don't seem to find an audience, and it's because they didn't consider who their audience was going to be. And now they have a film that has no home because they just don't know who the audience was supposed to be for it. They basically made the movie for themselves and thought that everybody else was going to like it too because they liked it, which is also part of the consideration of the audience. If it's something that you like, then there might be a couple thousand people out there that like the same thing. But until you find out who those people are, it's just going to be out there in the world and nobody's going to find it. So that's, another discussion further down the line. But at least for starting the story, considering who the audience is the most important thing you can do. Because if it turns out there isn't an audience for it, then you can make the decision whether or not you want to go further with the idea. Or if you don't know who the audience is, you could still kind of get a sense of who might like it, and be able to consider certain elements of the story that could appeal to certain audiences. So yeah, that's one of the most key things that I wanted to address for this week, and one that I thought about after I was done with the podcast, and I realized, hey, ideas are great to have, but if you don't know where they're supposed to go, then what's the use of developing them? And, if it's something where it's an idea that can be used to turn into something else, or it's just for fun, those are also very beneficial ideas as well. If it's something that's not meant for anybody else to see, but it's just meant for you to practice, those are some really fun things to do. And I always like to say that there is no such thing as wasted writing, because even if you develop an idea and you know that there isn't an audience for it, at least have practiced just writing something. And it's something that you can have fun with. It doesn't need to go anywhere. It's just for you to do. And you never know. Sometimes an idea that you didn't think was going to go anywhere and you were just writing it for fun, all of a sudden there's a market for it. Or, you show it to somebody and they say, this usually wouldn't work, but for some reason your story works and we should do something with it because there actually is an audience for it. So, there are so many different avenues that, at least considering the audience at the beginning, can benefit you in the long run. And that's really what we do this for anyway. If we're not making movies for other people, then what are we doing it for? Are we creating screenplays because we want to be, we are doing it for our careers for sure, but are we doing it because we just want to live in a vacuum and not have anybody see our work? The reason to write a screenplay is so that the screenplay will be produced and then people will be able to see it, and hopefully it's maintained its integrity throughout that entire process, that when it is ready to be shown to an audience, that the essence of it remained. So how do we figure out who our audience is for this idea that we have in our head? Well, that really depends on what the idea is. If there are movies that you can turn to that are references to what you're trying to make, then they've kind of already done the work for you. You can easily look up, if you're interested in the box office, if you're interested in how much it made, how much it was made for. Those are some good indications of how your idea might play in the marketplace. On the other hand, you can also look at a film festival and see if the type of movie that you're trying to make won awards. And that could also help. Just remember that whatever it is you're trying to do with your idea, there has already been someone out there throughout the history of this medium that has tried something like your idea. And it may seem like a new idea, it may seem like something fresh, but start digging into other movies that are like the movie you're trying to make. And sometimes you might be surprised. There have been ideas that I've had where I just thought, there's no way that this idea has not been done. And then I'll go on IMDb and I'll look for it, or I'll go on Google and try to find lists of movies that are like the type of movie I'm trying to make. And sometimes I don't see an example of the story I want to write, because maybe it was from a different perspective, or it just, for some reason, nobody produced that kind of movie. And that's another thing to consider as well, is that your idea might have been written already, but it has never been written from your perspective. Or it's never been written from a perspective that maybe you want to write it from. And that can also be very interesting, and that as well can define what kind of audience you're going after. If you're trying to take a minor character from a very popular movie, that could possibly play really well with the general audience, but most likely it'll work better with a filmmaking audience that has seen whatever film and would recognize the references and would recognize what you're trying to do with that story, especially if it's something that has been very popular. But most likely, you will find an audience for whatever idea you have. The key is to find out who that audience is and how your idea can be something that they will want to see. Now, there's a lot of different kinds of movies out there. We've all seen the Oscar-nominated movies that are very serious and dramatic, and then there's the other side of the spectrum where there's fun movies that don't take themselves too seriously and are B movies that have great production, but the story is just insane, and yet they're still very entertaining. You'll be surprised how much the audience just wants to see a fun movie and wants to see a movie that they can watch with their friends and that they can talk about with other people. And as long as the story is good, that's really all they care about. If they have a plot that is interesting, people are looking for all kinds of different content, and most likely the idea that you have will turn into something if you stick with it. And it really is just understanding who that audience is that's going to want that idea that is really the key. So I want to encourage everybody to consider the audience. In fact, considering the audience first makes the process a lot more fun. Because then when you start to develop the idea, you have a picture in your head of somebody crying about a moment in your film, or laughing at a moment in the film, or you begin to visualize this audience that you haven't met yet that's going to appreciate the film. And hopefully you are one of the people in this audience because you're the one writing it. And so if you're feeling these emotions as you're developing the story and as you're writing it, then that's a good indication that you're on the right track. And then all you have to do is figure out other people who feel the same way you do. And there's your audience. So that's all I have for this week. I hope everybody's being safe, and I will talk to you on the next one. Bye.